This is interesting. Kyle Rittenhouse, y'all remember Kyle Rittenhouse? For some reason, after the trial, he became this MAGA celebrity and would go on MAGA podcasts and was sort of a Trump guy. Well, he is now having a falling out with MAGA, which is really interesting. You love to see MAGA infighting, and I'll explain that to you. Then I'll show you an example of a MAGA podcaster very upset with Kyle Rittenhouse, and there's just a lot within this that I feel like there's interesting points to make around. But the big announcement came from Kyle Rittenhouse. Again, why people are waiting to hear, what does he have to say on the election, I don't know. But people are. He has over 1 million followers on Twitter, and apparently he's losing tens of thousands of followers over this, which is pretty stunning. So here was the announcement from Kyle Rittenhouse, and then we'll look at the reaction.
Hi, I'm Kyle Rittenhouse, Outreach Director for Texas Gun Rights. A lot of people are upset that I said I'm going to be writing in Ron Paul for President of the United States. And that is true. I will be writing in Ron Paul. Unfortunately, Donald Trump had bad advisors making him bad on the Second Amendment, and that is my issue. If you cannot be completely uncompromisable on the Second Amendment, I will not vote for you, and I will write somebody else in. We need champions for the Second Amendment, or our rights will be eaten away and eroded each day. I support my decision, and I have no take-backs.
Okay, no takes back. No takesy backsies, says Kyle Rittenhouse. So then Eric Matney, who is a MAGA guy, he posted a video responding. And here's the thing I find so fascinating. You know when someone is wrong, but their explanation is correct? So, for example, Eric here is upset with Kyle Rittenhouse because he wants Kyle Rittenhouse to vote for Trump. That's the wrong conclusion. But his argumentation is more logical than Kyle Rittenhouse's, because Kyle Rittenhouse is saying he's going to write in Ron Paul since Trump, someone who did not want to do much of anything to address gun violence in the United States, but he wasn't against enough for Kyle Rittenhouse common sense gun regulations. And so I should note the whacked perception of the Second Amendment from people like Kyle Rittenhouse. That's an important assumption in this conversation. We all assume, we all know. I'm assuming that you know, I guess, is the point, that I believe his characterizing of Trump's little actions here and there relating to guns as violations of the Second Amendment or common sense gun regulations as violations, I disagree with that characterization from him. I find it wacky. But given that he believes that, even so, logically, it doesn't make sense to not vote for someone because you want to be a purist, you know? You want to just, they have to be 100% or nothing, when obviously based on Kyle Rittenhouse's stance, which is the incorrect one, Trump is closer to him than Kamala Harris would be. Whoa. And that's the point that Eric here makes. So it's an interesting discussion to have where he's right in his logic, but both of these individuals I find reprehensible in their political views.
Kyle Rittenhouse, you're a young guy, and I don't think you fully understand what it is that you're doing by writing in Ron Paul. This election, unless you've not realized it, is a binary choice. You're going to have to choose between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. There is no write-in. Writing in Ron Paul, he's not on the ticket. He is not a choice for candidacy. He is non-existent. If you write him in, you might as well not vote or vote for Kamala Harris, because any vote you're taking away from Trump is a vote for Kamala Harris. Now, your beef with Donald Trump is because you don't think he was good enough on the Second Amendment. You had issues with him. Let me tell you something. Most of us in the conservative movement don't agree with Donald Trump 100% of the time. Most of us are vocal. And guess what, Kyle? I know that we live in these echo chambers where you think everybody has to echo your sentiments 100% of the time, but that's not the case. Not a human being alive, not your mother, not your father, not your wife, not your kids. There's nobody you're going to agree with 100% of the time, let alone an elected politician. And it's okay to have policy differences with Donald Trump. Ronald Reagan used to say, you're not my 20% enemy, you're my 80% friend. So someone you agree with 80, 90% of the time doesn't become your enemy and you dispose of them simply because there's one issue. Are we as conservatives one-issue voters? I hardly think so. We don't go that way. We're looking at it in an aggregate sense of where this country is going. If you're satisfied with the direction this country is going, vote for Kamala Harris. And guess what? That AR-15 that you used to defend your own life, she wants to take that away from you. She wants to make sure that nobody, no American ever has the right to possess that firearm. She also endorsed, she promoted the bail fund, endorsed, and went on Stephen Colbert's show and said, hey, they should keep rioting. They're not going to stop. She promoted the riots.
False. Wasn't for violence or breaking the law.
That nearly got you killed, and she wanted to take away the weapon that you used to save your own life. Just because you have some minor policy differences with Donald Trump is no reason to take your following and your influence and throw it away and really use that to steer the election towards Kamala Harris. You don't have to agree with Trump 100% of the time, but this is a binary choice. We're either heading down the road to socialism, which we've been on for 4 years, or we turn this country around. There is no in between.
So again, he came to the incorrect conclusion because of different principles that he has, but he's making a more logical argument than Kyle Rittenhouse. Or they're both making arguments that have logic, but they have very different principles. And this gets to, while my vitriol, that's a really strong word, while my feelings of negativity are different in their magnitude towards Rittenhouse versus someone on the left who may not vote for Harris because of some subject, there is a comparison to be made there, which is that Rittenhouse is using a similar logic to people that I've talked to who are on the left, but who, because of this subject or that subject, don't want to vote for Harris. It was Biden before, but now Harris, even while they acknowledge she's better on all the issues and that Trump poses an existential threat to our democracy and that one of the two of them is going to win. They can acknowledge all those things but still say, but I'd feel like I'm sacrificing my principles somehow by voting for someone that I take issue with on a particular subject. And I'm not sending a message if I go do that, etc. But if your principle, as it should be, I think, in politics, is to use our political system and the great power that comes along with that system to facilitate the best outcome for people, then if you understand Trump or Harris is going to win and you understand your vote has value in that, can make some impact on that, however small, then choosing to do anything other than the most to defeat Trump and elect Kamala Harris violates the principle of trying to yield the best outcome with your actions in our political system. Because engaging in politics is not a way of self-aggrandizement. And I think some people use it that way. And so by voting for someone that they don't 100% align with or that makes them feel less pure, less litmus tested, then they feel worse. But shouldn't you feel great about just doing what you can to contribute to the better outcome, even if you don't feel it's fantastic? I happen to think Kamala Harris is a fantastic candidate, but even if you didn't, but you knew she's better than Trump, then why wouldn't you do the maximum to elect her with your vote, giving it to her and not third party or not voting or something? And so it's a similar argument, but flipped around here from Eric Matney when it comes to Kyle Rittenhouse. And I do think for Rittenhouse, there's not a whole lot of logic going on. It's more, it feels exciting. He's going to get a lot of attention. I don't think he was prepared for the backlash that he's going to receive. And so this is a good example of politics being to morally grandstand and to pat yourself on the back for how pure you are, but not actually just doing whatever you can to yield the best outcome. Because I know Rittenhouse would say, to Eric's point, that he believes Trump is better than Kamala Harris. So in his world, voting for Trump would be the better option. But this definitely applies to those on our side who deploy similar logic. And I would encourage you to bring this argument to them. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments. If you want to get extra content daily, you can do so by clicking the join button below.